My wife and I once had a beach house, but we moved to the city. I hadn't gone back for 26 years. She went there 4 times a year. When she passed away, my kids said, "Sell that useless place." I decided to visit before selling, but when I opened the rusty gate, I froze at what was living there. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Howard, and 6 months ago, I buried the only person who ever truly understood me. Julie was everything to me for 38 years of marriage, and now I sit alone in our empty house while my own children treat me like a burden they need to manage. The phone call came at exactly 7:30 this morning, just like it has every Tuesday for the past month. Marcus, my eldest son, doesn't even bother with pleasantries anymore. "Dad, we need to talk about that beach house situation again." His voice carried that tone he used when he thought he was being patient with me. "You're throwing money away keeping that place." I gripped the coffee mug Julie had given me last Christmas, the one with our wedding photo printed on the side. My hands weren't as steady as they used to be. "It's not throwing money away, Marcus. Your mother loved that house." "Mom's gone, Dad." The words hit like a slap. "Diana and I have been talking, and we think it's time you started making practical decisions about your finances." Diana. My daughter had been just as relentless as her brother, calling me every few days with the same lecture about fiscal responsibility and planning for the future, as if I were some senile old man who couldn't balance a checkbook. "The property taxes alone are costing you $4,800 a year," Marcus continued. "Plus maintenance, insurance, utilities. You're looking at almost $15,000 annually for a house you never visit." Never visit. That was the part that stung the most because it was true. Julie had gone to that beach house 4 times every year without fail. Spring, summer, fall, and once in winter for what she called her contemplation season. She always invited me, but I always had some excuse. Work commitments, even after I retired, golf tournaments, routine doctor appointments that could have been rescheduled. Now I wondered why I had been so reluctant to join her. Maybe because the house represented something I didn't understand about my wife, something private that she kept separate from our daily life together. "Your mother put a lot of love into that place," I said, watching a cardinal land on the bird feeder Julie had installed outside our kitchen window. "Dad, listen to yourself." Marcus's voice grew sharper. "Love doesn't pay bills. You're on a fixed income now. Social Security and your pension aren't going to stretch forever, especially with healthcare costs rising." This was always his angle, the practical financial argument. Marcus worked in real estate development, so he saw everything in terms of market value and profit margins. He'd inherited Julie's sharp mind for numbers, but none of her warmth. "Have you even been inside that house since Mom died?" Diana's voice came through the speaker. She must have been listening on the extension from her home across town. "Because I went by there last month, and Dad, it's falling apart. The paint is peeling, there's rust on the gate, and the whole place looks abandoned." My chest tightened. Julie had always kept that house immaculate. She was proud of every detail, from the garden she'd planted along the front walkway to the rocking chairs she'd positioned perfectly on the wraparound porch. If it was deteriorating now, it meant she really was gone. "Maybe I should go take a look," I said quietly. "Why?" Marcus jumped in immediately. "Dad, you're 74 years old. You have no business driving 3 hours each way to look at a property you're going to sell anyway. Just list it with a realtor and be done with it." 74. He said it like I was ancient, like I should be grateful they were even letting me make decisions about my own property. Julie would have been furious if she'd heard the way they spoke to me. "The market's good right now," Diana added. "Properties in that area are selling for $250,000 to $300,000. That's a significant amount of money, Dad. Money you could use for assisted living when the time comes." Assisted living. They'd been dropping hints about that for months too, ever since Julie passed, as if losing my wife automatically made me incompetent to live independently. "I'm not ready for assisted living," I said firmly. "Of course not," Marcus replied in that condescending tone again, "but it's good to plan ahead, and selling the beach house would give you options." Options. They made it sound like they were doing me a favor, when what they really wanted was to secure their inheritance. I'd seen the way Marcus looked at Julie's jewelry collection when we were going through her things, the way Diana had quickly claimed Julie's good china for safekeeping. I need time to think about this, I said. Dad, you've had 6 months to think about it. Diana's voice carried a hint of the impatience she usually reserved for her teenage daughters. How much more time do you need? 6 months. Had it really been that long since Julie drew her last breath in the hospital room, her hand growing cold in mine while machines beeped their final warnings? It felt like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once. The longer you wait, the more money you're wasting, Marcus said. And frankly, Dad, we're worried about your judgment lately. Yesterday you told me you couldn't remember if you'd paid the electric bill, but you're holding on to a property that's costing you over $1,000 a month. That hit differently because there was truth in it. My mind had been foggy since Julie died. Some days I forgot to eat lunch. Other days I found myself standing in the kitchen, unable to remember what I'd come in there to do. The grief felt like a thick blanket that muffled everything around me. Maybe Marcus is right, Diana said, her voice softer now. Maybe it would be better to simplify things. Get rid of unnecessary expenses so you can focus on taking care of yourself. Taking care of myself. Such a clinical way to describe the process of learning how to live without the person who had been my partner in everything for nearly 4 decades. I'll think about it, I repeated, but even as I said the words, I knew they wouldn't be satisfied with that answer much longer. After I hung up, I sat in the silence of our kitchen, surrounded by Julie's things. Her reading glasses still sat on the counter next to yesterday's newspaper. Her coffee mug was still in the dish drainer where I'd left it after washing it the morning she went into the hospital for the last time. Maybe they were right. Maybe holding on to the beach house was just prolonging the inevitable. Maybe it was time to let go of the last piece of Julie's world that I'd never really understood. 3 weeks passed before I finally broke down and called Marcus back. The pressure had been relentless. Daily phone calls, surprise visits where Diana would walk through the house pointing out things that needed repair, and worst of all, the subtle suggestions that maybe I wasn't capable of managing my own affairs anymore. I'll do it, I said when Marcus answered his phone. I'll sell the beach house. The relief in his voice was immediate and unmistakable. That's great, Dad. Really, you're making the smart choice here. I can recommend a realtor who specializes in coastal properties. She's very efficient. That seemed to be the only quality that mattered to my children anymore. Not sentimental value, not memories, not the fact that their mother had considered that house her sanctuary. Before we list it, I want to go down there one more time, I said, to collect any personal items that might still be there. There was a pause. Dad, is that really necessary? I mean, what could be there that's worth a 6-hour round trip? Your mother spent a lot of time there, Marcus. There might be photographs, books, things that have sentimental value. Another pause, longer this time. Okay, but don't go alone. Why don't Diana and I come with you? We can help you sort through everything. The last thing I wanted was my children pawing through Julie's private things, making snap decisions about what was worth keeping and what should be thrown away. They'd already done enough of that when we cleared out her closet. I need to do this myself, I said firmly. Dad, you're talking about a 3-hour drive each way. What if something happens? What if your car breaks down or you have a medical emergency? Medical emergency. They'd been using that phrase a lot lately, as if I were a ticking time bomb ready to collapse at any moment. Yes, I was 74. And yes, I took medication for high blood pressure and cholesterol, but I wasn't an invalid. I'll be fine, Marcus. I've been driving longer than you've been alive. That's exactly what worries me, Diana chimed in. She must have been listening on the extension again. Your reflexes aren't what they used to be, Dad, and you've been so distracted lately. Distracted. That was their polite way of saying they thought grief had made me senile. Maybe they weren't entirely wrong. I had been forgetting things, losing track of time, finding myself staring out the window for hours without realizing it. But this trip felt important, necessary in a way I couldn't explain. I'm going, I said with more conviction than I felt. Either you trust me to handle this or you don't. Of course we trust you, Marcus said quickly, though his tone suggested otherwise. We just worry about you. Maybe you could at least let us know when you're leaving and when you get back, just so we know you're safe. Check-ins, like I was a teenager borrowing the family car. But I agreed because it was easier than arguing, and because some part of me was touched that they cared enough to worry, even if their concern felt more like an obligation than genuine affection. I planned the trip for the following Saturday. Marcus had offered to arrange for someone to drive me, but I declined. This was something I needed to do alone, without witnesses, without my children's running commentary about practicality and efficiency. The night before I left, I sat in Julie's study, looking through the photo albums she'd kept so meticulously organized. There were pictures from our early years together, our wedding, the kids when they were small and still thought I was wonderful. But as I flipped through the later albums, I noticed something strange. The photos became less frequent, and in the ones from recent years, Julie was often alone. There she was at the beach house, sitting on the porch with a book in her lap. Another shot of her in what looked like a garden, though I didn't remember her ever mentioning gardening at the beach house. In several photos she was smiling, but it was a different smile than the one she wore in our family pictures. This smile looked peaceful, content in a way that made me realize how rarely I'd seen that expression on her face in recent years. When had she stopped looking at me that way? When had we stopped taking pictures together? I closed the albums and went to bed, but sleep didn't come easily. I kept thinking about those photos, about the woman who had shared my bed for 38 years, but had kept an entire piece of her life separate from me. Why hadn't she ever really pushed me to come with her to the beach house? Had she wanted me there, or had she preferred the solitude? The next morning, I loaded the car with supplies Julie would have insisted on. Water bottles, snacks, a first aid kit, and a cell phone charger. She'd always been the practical one, the planner who thought 3 steps ahead while I lived in the moment. The drive took longer than I expected. My hands cramped on the steering wheel, and I had to stop twice to stretch my legs and use the restroom. By the time I reached the coastal highway, the sun was already past its peak, casting long shadows across the salt marshes that lined the road. I'd forgotten how beautiful this stretch of coastline was. Julie had tried to describe it to me over the years, but I'd never really listened. Now, seeing it for myself, I understood why she'd been drawn here. There was something timeless about the landscape, something that made the problems of daily life feel small and manageable. The turnoff to our street was marked by a weathered sign that read Palmetto Cove, Private Road. I'd helped write the check for that sign 15 years ago, but I'd never actually seen it installed. Julie had handled all the details of maintaining the beach house, from paying the property taxes to hiring contractors for repairs. As I drove down the narrow road toward our house, my chest grew tight with anticipation and dread. What would I find there? What secrets had Julie kept in this place that she'd visited 4 times a year without me? The house sat at the end of a dead-end street, partially hidden by mature palmetto trees and overgrown shrubs. I could see Diana had been right about the property looking neglected. The paint was indeed peeling, and the metal gate that led to the front walkway had developed a coat of rust. I parked in the gravel driveway and sat for a moment, engine off, listening to the sound of waves in the distance. Julie had always said the ocean called to her, and now I could hear what she meant. There was something hypnotic about the rhythm, something that seemed to slow down time itself. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed the house keys from my pocket and walked toward the front gate. My hand shook slightly as I reached for the latch. Whatever I found on the other side of this gate would change everything I thought I knew about my wife and my marriage. The rusty metal protested as I pulled it open, and that's when I froze, because what I saw in the front yard wasn't abandonment and neglect. What I saw made my breath catch in my throat. The yard was immaculate. Not just maintained, but lovingly cared for. Fresh flowers bloomed in neat rows along the walkway. The grass was recently mowed, and someone had even repaired the loose boards on the front porch steps. This wasn't the abandoned property Diana had described. Someone was living here. My first instinct was to get back in the car and call the police. We'd had squatters, people who had broken into our house and made themselves at home. But as I looked closer, I noticed something that stopped me cold. Hanging from the porch railing was a wind chime that I recognized. Julie had bought it at a craft fair in town 3 years ago. I remembered because she'd been so excited about it, and I'd grumbled about the expense. Children's laughter drifted from behind the house, followed by the sound of a woman's voice speaking in Spanish. My Spanish was rusty, but I caught enough to understand she was telling someone to be careful near the water. I walked slowly up the front steps, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. The front door was painted a cheerful yellow, Julie's favorite color, and there were potted plants arranged carefully on either side. Through the window I could see furniture that looked familiar, but also things that definitely hadn't been there the last time I'd visited this house 15 years ago. Before I could knock, the door opened. A small Hispanic woman, probably in her 50s, stood in the doorway holding a dish towel. Her dark hair was streaked with gray and pulled back in a neat bun, and she wore a simple blue dress with an apron tied around her waist. When she saw me, her face went pale. "Senor Howard," she said in accented English, her voice barely above a whisper. She knew my name. This woman who was clearly living in my house knew who I was. "I'm sorry," I managed to say. "I think there's been some kind of mistake. This is my property. My wife and I own this house." The woman's eyes filled with tears, and she pressed the dish towel to her mouth. "Senora Julie," she whispered. "She is. She died 6 months ago," I said gently, though my mind was racing. How did this woman know Julie? And why was she crying about my wife's death like she'd lost someone close to her? "Please," the woman said, stepping back and gesturing for me to come inside. "Please, I explain everything. My name is Maria Gonzalez." I hesitated for a moment, then stepped across the threshold into what had once been our beach house living room. The furniture was arranged differently than I remembered, and there were personal touches everywhere. Family photographs on the mantel, children's drawings stuck to the refrigerator with magnets, a basket of yarn and knitting needles beside one of the chairs. "You've been living here?" I said. It wasn't a question. Maria nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. 15 years, she said. "Senora Julie, she saved my family." 15 years? I repeated, trying to process what she was telling me. "Julie knew you were living here for 15 years? She bring us here after Hurricane Isabel," Maria explained, sitting down heavily in one of the chairs. "We lose everything. Our house, our jobs, everything. We have nowhere to go, and Senora Julie, she find us at the shelter." Hurricane Isabel. I remembered that storm. It had hit the coast hard in 2008, causing massive flooding and property damage. Julie had been concerned about our beach house, and she'd driven down to check on it right after the hurricane passed. She'd come back saying the house was fine, just minor wind damage that she'd already arranged to have repaired. She'd never mentioned finding a homeless family. She'd never mentioned bringing anyone here to live. "She said we could stay until we get back on our feet," Maria continued. "But then my husband Roberto, he gets sick, cancer. And Senora Julie, she say we family now. She say this our home too." I sat down across from her, my legs suddenly feeling weak. "Your husband had cancer?" 5 years he fight," Maria said, fresh tears flowing. "Senora Julie, she help us with medical bills. She drive him to treatments when I have to work. She like, how you say, an angel." Julie, who had always been generous with charities but practical about money, had been secretly supporting a family for 15 years. She'd been paying their medical bills, giving them a place to live, treating them like family. "Where is your husband now?" I asked. "He passed 2 years ago," Maria said quietly. "Same sickness that takes Senora Julie, the same sickness." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "Julie had cancer?" Maria's eyes widened and she covered her mouth with her hand. "You not know?" "Know what?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. "She fight cancer for 3 years," Maria whispered. "She come here for treatments at the hospital in Jacksonville. She say she not want to worry you, not want to be burden." The room started spinning. Julie had been fighting cancer for 3 years and I hadn't known. She'd been driving to Jacksonville for treatments, staying in this house, being cared for by a woman I'd never met. "The treatments," I said slowly. "That's why she came here 4 times a year." Maria nodded. "Every 3 months she come for tests and treatment. She stay with us and we take care of her. She like mother to my children." Children. I looked around the room again, really seeing it this time. The drawings on the refrigerator, the small shoes lined up by the back door, the video game controllers on the coffee table. "How many children do you have?" I asked. 3, Maria said with a sad smile. "Miguel is 22 now. He work at the marina. Sophia is 18. She start college this fall. And little Carlos, he is 15. They've lived here their entire lives. Since Miguel was 7 and Sophia was 3, this is only home Carlos remember." I tried to imagine it. Julie coming here every 3 months, not for relaxation or solitude like I'd thought, but for cancer treatments. Staying with this family who had become her second family, being surrounded by children who loved her while she fought a disease she'd kept secret from her own husband. "Why didn't she tell me?" I asked, though I wasn't really expecting Maria to answer. but she did. She say you have enough worry. She say you good man, but you no understand why she need this place. She say this her secret garden, where she can be sick without making everyone sad. A secret garden. That's how Julie had seen this house. Not as property or investment, but as a refuge where she could be vulnerable without burdening the people she loved. The money, I said suddenly. The maintenance costs, the utilities, feeding your family. Where did the money come from? Maria looked uncomfortable. She have job here. She work part-time at the art gallery in town. She say the money she make it stay here. For the house, for us. Julie had a job. My wife, who I thought was simply taking relaxing vacations 4 times a year, had been working to support another family while battling cancer alone. Senor Howard, Maria said carefully, your children, they know about us. What do you mean? After Senora Julie pass away, they come here. They tell us we have to leave. They say you selling the house, and we have no right to be here. My chest tightened with a familiar anger. My children came here. See, the man, he very angry. He say we taking advantage, we stealing from family. The woman, she not so angry, but she say we have to go before you find out. Marcus and Diana knew. They knew about Maria and her family, and they'd tried to evict them secretly. They'd stood in my kitchen and lectured me about wasted money and impractical expenses, knowing full well that this house was home to a woman who had cared for their mother during the worst time of her life. What did you tell them? I asked. We say we wait to talk to you first. We respect Senora Julie too much to leave without you knowing the truth. The truth. My children had known the truth about Julie's secret life, about her cancer, about this family she'd helped, and they'd chosen to hide it from me. They'd been willing to throw a grieving family out of their home rather than let me discover what kind of woman my wife really was. The sound of footsteps on the porch interrupted my thoughts. The back door opened and a teenage boy walked in, sandy and sun-bronzed from a day at the beach. When he saw me sitting in the living room, he stopped short. Mama, he said to Maria, his voice uncertain. Carlos, come meet Senor Howard, Maria said gently. Senora Julie's husband. The boy's face lit up with recognition and something that looked like relief. Senor Howard, Senora Julie, she talk about you all the time. She say you good man, you just need time to understand. Understand what? I wanted to ask. But looking at this boy who had grown up in my house, who had been loved by my wife like a grandson, I was beginning to realize that the person who needed understanding wasn't Julie. It was me. Carlos sat down at the kitchen table where Maria had served me coffee and homemade empanadas. He moved with the easy familiarity of someone who belonged here, and I noticed he had Julie's same habit of drumming his fingers when he was thinking. Senora Julie always say you come here someday, he said, studying my face. She keep box of letters for you in her room. What letters? I asked. Maria and Carlos exchanged glances. She write to you sometimes, Maria explained, when she feeling sad or scared. But she never send them. She say maybe someday she be brave enough, but that day never come. My throat felt tight. Julie had been writing letters to me that she never sent, pouring out feelings she couldn't share in person. Can I see them? Maria hesitated. Are you sure, Senor Howard? Some things, maybe they hurt to read. I thought about that for a moment. In the past hour, I'd learned that my wife had battled cancer for 3 years without telling me, that she'd been secretly supporting a family for 15 years, and that my own children had known about all of this and tried to cover it up. How much more could these letters hurt? I need to see them, I said. Maria nodded and stood up. Carlos, take Senor Howard to Senora Julie's room. I get the box. Carlos led me down a hallway I barely remembered to a bedroom at the back of the house. When he opened the door, I stepped into what was clearly Julie's private sanctuary. The walls were painted a soft lavender, and the windows faced the ocean. There was a desk positioned to catch the morning light, and bookshelves lined with novels I'd never seen her read at home. She spent a lot of time here, Carlos said quietly, especially when she not feeling good from the medicine. On the nightstand beside the bed was a framed photograph that made my chest ache. It was a picture of the two of us from our honeymoon, young and hopeful and completely in love. Next to it was a more recent photo of Carlos, Sofia, and Miguel building a sandcastle on the beach. Maria appeared in the doorway holding a wooden box that I recognized. I'd made it for Julie in our woodworking class 30 years ago. She'd claimed to love it, but I'd never known what she kept inside. Take your time, Maria said, setting the box on the desk. We give you privacy. They left me alone with 30 years of my wife's secret thoughts. I sat down at her desk and opened the box with trembling hands. Inside were dozens of letters, organized by date, going back almost 20 years. The earliest ones were written on our regular household stationery. The later ones were on paper I didn't recognize, with a letterhead that read, Coastal Cancer Care Center. I picked up one from the middle of the stack, dated 3 years ago. My dearest Howard, it began. Today I found out that the cancer has come back. Dr. Martinez wants to start chemotherapy right away, but I asked for a few days to think about it. Not because I'm not going to fight, I am, but because I need to figure out how to do this without destroying the peace you found in your retirement. You've been so happy these past few months playing golf with Bill, working in the garden, reading those mystery novels you love. You smile more than you have in years. How can I take that away from you by telling you I'm sick again? I know what you're thinking as you read this, that I should have told you immediately that we should face this together. And you're right, but Howard, you've spent 40 years taking care of everyone else. You worked 60-hour weeks to provide for our family. You held my hand through 2 miscarriages. You sat in waiting rooms during my mother's long illness. You've earned the right to be happy without worrying about me. Maria says I'm being selfish, that I'm robbing you of the chance to be my hero one more time. But I've watched you be everyone's hero for so long. Maybe it's time for me to be my own hero. Maybe it's time for me to handle something difficult without leaning on you. The children don't need to know either. Marcus is so busy with his new business, and Diana has her hands full with the girls. They have their own lives to live. They shouldn't have to watch their mother fall apart. I hope someday I'll be brave enough to share these letters with you. I hope someday I'll be able to explain why I needed this place, why I needed Maria and her family, why I needed to keep this part of my life separate. It's not because I love you less. It's because I love you too much to watch you suffer because of my suffering. I love you, Howard. I've loved you every day for 35 years, even when we felt like strangers living in the same house. Especially then. Forever yours, Julie. I had to stop reading. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper, and tears were streaming down my face. Julie had been sick, scared, and fighting for her life, and she'd done it all alone because she wanted to protect me. But the worst part was that she was right. I had been happy in retirement. I'd been playing golf and reading books and puttering around the house, completely oblivious to my wife's pain. How had I become so disconnected from the person I'd shared my life with? I picked up another letter, this one from just a year ago. My dearest Howard, today was a good day. The latest scans show the tumors are shrinking, and Dr. Martinez is optimistic about my prognosis. I actually felt well enough to help Maria plant new flowers in the front garden. Carlos taught me how to braid friendship bracelets, and Sophia showed me pictures from her senior prom. These people have become my family in a way I never expected. When I'm here, I'm not just Julie the wife or Julie the mother. I'm just Julie, a woman who loves flowers and teenage gossip and the sound of children laughing. I'd forgotten who that person was. I think about bringing you here sometimes. I imagine showing you the garden, introducing you to Miguel's girlfriend, watching you teach Carlos how to fish from the pier. But then I remember how uncomfortable you get around people you don't know, how you always feel like an outsider in other people's homes. This is my space, Howard. For the first time in my adult life, I have a space that belongs completely to me. Does that make me selfish? Does that make me a bad wife? I don't think you'd understand. You've always been so self-contained, so sure of who you are and what you want. You don't need other people the way I do. You don't need the messiness of extended family and complicated relationships. But I do. I need Carlos asking me to help with his homework. I need Sophia calling me abuela and asking for advice about boys. I need Maria's quiet strength and Roberto's terrible jokes. I need to feel needed in a way that has nothing to do with managing a household or coordinating family schedules. Is it wrong that I'm happier here than I am at home? Is it wrong that when I think about dying, what makes me saddest isn't leaving you, because I know you'll be fine, but leaving them? I love you, Howard, but I love them too, and I don't know how to make those two loves fit together in one life. Forever yours, Julie. I set the letter down and stared out the window at the ocean Julie had loved so much. She'd been right about me in some ways. I was uncomfortable around people I didn't know, and I did prefer the predictability of my own routines. But she'd been wrong about the most important thing. I wouldn't have been fine without her. I wasn't fine without her. There was a soft knock on the door, and Maria peered in. "You okay, Senor Howard?" I wiped my eyes and nodded, though I felt anything but okay. "Maria, can I ask you something?" Of course. Was she happy here? Really happy? Maria's face softened. She was herself here. Sometimes sad, sometimes scared, but always herself. At home, she say she feel like she playing role. Here, she could just be Julie. Just be Julie. My wife had felt like she was playing a role in her own home, in her own marriage. What did that say about the life we'd built together? "There's something else," Maria said carefully. "In the bottom of the box. She write it just before she get too sick to come here anymore." I reached into the box and found an envelope marked, "For Howard, to be opened only if something happens to me." My hands trembled as I opened it, already knowing this would be the hardest letter to read, but I had to know. After 38 years of marriage, I finally had to know what my wife really thought about our life together. The final letter was different from the others. The handwriting was shakier, and there were water stains on the paper that could only have been tears. "My beloved Howard, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you finally found this place that meant so much to me. I hope Maria and her family were able to explain why I kept this secret from you. I hope you can understand, even if you can't forgive me. I need to tell you something that will hurt you, and I'm sorry for that. But you deserve to know the truth about our children, especially now that I won't be there to run interference anymore. Marcus and Diana know about Maria and her family. They've known for 2 years. They found out when Marcus was going through our bank statements after I gave him power of attorney for the beach house account. He saw the payments I was making for utilities and property taxes, and he hired a private investigator to find out what was happening here. When they discovered Maria's family living here, they didn't come to you or to me. They came here and threatened Maria. They told her she was trespassing, that they would have her arrested and her children deported if she didn't leave immediately. They told her they would claim she had been stealing from us. Maria called me, terrified and sobbing. I drove down that same day and confronted our children. Howard, I've never seen them so cold, so calculating. They weren't concerned about us being taken advantage of. They were concerned about their inheritance. Marcus told me that supporting Maria's family was fiscally irresponsible and that I was compromising their financial future. Diana said that I was being manipulated by people who didn't deserve our charity. When I tried to explain what this family meant to me, how they had cared for me during my illness, Marcus actually laughed. He said, "Mom, you're sick. You're not thinking clearly. These people are using your condition to take advantage of you." Using my condition, as if my cancer had made me stupid instead of just tired. I told them about my treatments, about how Maria had driven me to chemotherapy when I was too weak to drive myself, about how Roberto had built me a special chair for the porch so I could sit comfortably during my recovery periods. I told them how Carlos would read to me when the medications made me too nauseous to focus, and how Sophia would braid my hair when it started growing back. Do you know what Diana said? She said, "We could have done all of that for you, Mom. You should have told us you were sick instead of confiding in strangers." But here's the thing, Howard. They couldn't have done those things for me. Not because they weren't capable, but because they would have turned my cancer into their tragedy. They would have made my illness about their inconvenience, their schedule disruptions, their emotional burden. Maria never once complained about driving me to treatments, even when it meant missing work. She never made me feel guilty for being sick. She never treated me like I was fragile or pathetic. She just loved me and took care of me the way families should. Our children made me choose, Howard. They said either I cut ties with Maria's family and sell the beach house, or they would take legal action to have me declared mentally incompetent due to my illness. They said they would claim I was being exploited by con artists and that I needed to be protected from my own poor judgment. I chose Maria's family. I chose the people who had never asked me for anything but had given me everything I needed during the worst time of my life. Marcus was furious. He said I was destroying our family legacy for people who weren't even American citizens. Diana cried and said I was choosing strangers over my own children. But Howard, they weren't strangers anymore. They were family in a way that Marcus and Diana had stopped being years ago. When did our children become so cruel? When did they stop seeing people as human beings and start seeing them only as financial assets or liabilities? I know we raised them better than this. I made them promise not to tell you about any of this while I was alive. I didn't want you to have to choose between your children and me. But now that I'm gone, you need to know who they really are. You need to know that when they pressure you to sell this house, it's not because they're worried about your finances. It's because they can't stand the thought of outsiders benefiting from what they consider their inheritance. Maria has a letter from me giving her family the right to stay in this house for as long as they want. It's not legally binding, but it's my written intention. I also left money in a separate account to cover the house expenses for the next 5 years. Marcus and Diana don't know about this account. I'm telling you this not because I want you to feel obligated to honor my wishes, but because I want you to make an informed decision. If you choose to sell this house and ask Maria's family to leave, that's your right. But if you do it knowing the truth about why our children want them gone. Howard, you're a good man. You've always been a good man. You worked hard to provide for us. You were faithful and dependable, and you loved us the best way you knew how. But somewhere along the way, we stopped really seeing each other. We became roommates instead of partners, and our children learned to see relationships as transactions instead of connections. I don't blame you for this. I don't blame myself either, not anymore. Sometimes people just drift apart, even when they love each other. But I hope you can find your way back to the man you were when we were young, the man who cared more about being kind than being practical. Maria and her family loved me not because of what I could give them, but because of who I was when I was with them. I hope you can find people like that too. I hope you can find a family that chooses you back. All my love. Always and forever, Julie. I sat in that chair for a long time after finishing the letter, watching the sun set over the ocean through Julie's bedroom window. My children hadn't just known about Julie's secret life, they had actively tried to destroy it. They had threatened an innocent family and manipulated their sick mother, all to protect money that wasn't even rightfully theirs yet. The sound of cooking drifted from the kitchen, Maria preparing dinner for her family, just as she had done every night for 15 years in the house my wife had shared with them, the house my children wanted to sell out from under them. There was a soft knock on the door. "Senor Howard?" It was Sophia, Maria's daughter. I'd heard her come home from work earlier. "Mama says dinner is ready if you want to join us." I looked up at this young woman who Julie had watched grow from a toddler into an adult. She had Maria's kind eyes and a shy smile that reminded me somehow of Julie. "You don't have to," she added quickly. "Mama just thought maybe you're hungry, and we always have too much food anyway." Too much food. Julie had always complained that I never cooked enough when it was my turn to make dinner. She'd said I had no sense of proportion, that I couldn't cook for more than one person because I'd spent so many years eating alone while she was here. Here, being part of a family that actually gathered around a table together every night. "I'd like that," I said, standing up slowly. My legs were stiff from sitting so long, and my heart felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. In the kitchen, Maria had set an extra place at the table. Carlos was already seated, telling Miguel about something that had happened at school. Miguel, who I now saw looked like a younger version of his father in the family photos on the refrigerator, was teasing his little brother good-naturedly. "Senor Howard," Miguel said, standing up when I entered the room. "I'm sorry we couldn't meet under better circumstances. Senora Julie talked about you all the time." "She did?" "Oh yes," Sophia said, taking the seat beside me. "She told us about your woodworking, and how you built her that jewelry box she loved so much. She showed us pictures of the bookshelf you made for your old house. Julie had talked about my woodworking. I'd given that up years ago, after I retired and couldn't see the point in making furniture we didn't need. But she'd remembered it, had been proud enough of my work to share it with this family." "She said you were very talented," Maria added, serving me a plate of rice and beans with grilled chicken. "She said you just forgot how much you loved creating things." As we ate dinner together, I listened to this family talk about their day, their plans, their dreams. Carlos was excited about making the varsity soccer team. Sophia was nervous about starting college in the fall. Miguel was saving money to propose to his girlfriend. Normal family conversation. The kind Julie and I used to have with Marcus and Diana when they were young, before they became adults who only called when they wanted something or needed to lecture me about my life choices. "Senor Howard," Carlos said as Maria served dessert, "are you going to make us leave?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. 3 generations of this family looking at me, waiting to hear whether I would honor Julie's wishes or bow to my children's pressure. "Carlos," Maria said sharply, "that's not appropriate." "It's okay," I said. "It's a fair question." I looked around the table at these people who had loved my wife when I was too distracted to see she needed loving. Who had cared for her when I didn't even know she was sick? Who had given her the family warmth that somehow our own family had lost along the way? My phone buzzed with a text message. Without looking, I knew it was either Marcus or Diana, checking to make sure I hadn't done anything foolish during my trip to the beach house. For the first time in months, I turned off my phone without reading the message. I spent that night in Julie's room, lying in the bed where she had recovered from chemotherapy treatments I never knew she'd endured. The sound of the ocean was different here than I'd expected. Not the harsh crashing I'd imagined, but a gentle, rhythmic whisper that seemed to ease the ache in my chest. In the morning, Maria knocked softly on the door and brought me coffee in Julie's favorite mug, the blue one with seashells painted around the rim. "How did you sleep?" she asked, settling into the chair by the window. "Better than I have in months," I admitted. It was true. For the first time since Julie died, I'd slept through the night without waking up reaching for her side of the bed. "She sleep good here too," Maria said. "Even when she very sick, she say the ocean help her rest." I sipped the coffee, which was stronger and more flavorful than anything I'd been making for myself at home. "Maria, I need to ask you something, and I want you to tell me the truth." She nodded, her dark eyes serious. "Do you want to stay here? Not because you feel obligated to honor Julie's memory, but because this is really your home." Maria was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the ocean. "My children, they born in Puerto Rico, but they grow up here. Carlos, he never know any other home. Sophia, she graduate from high school here. Miguel, he meet his girlfriend at the marina where he work. This is not just where we live, Senor Howard. This is where we belong. And me being here? Does that feel strange to you?" "No," she said immediately. "Feel right. Senora Julie always say this house too big for one person. She say it need family to make it alive. Family. I'd been thinking about that word a lot since reading Julie's letters. Blood didn't automatically make you family, and living in the same house didn't guarantee connection. Family was what you built with love and daily kindness and showing up for each other when it mattered." My phone had been buzzing with increasingly frantic messages since yesterday evening. I finally turned it on to find 17 missed calls and 23 text messages. Most were from Marcus and Diana, but some were from their spouses and even from Diana's teenage daughters. The messages followed a predictable pattern. First concern. "Dad, are you okay? You said you'd call when you got there." Then irritation. "We're worried sick. Please respond immediately." Finally, anger. "This is ridiculous. We're driving down there." The last message, sent at 6 this morning, was from Marcus. "Dad, we know you're upset about something. We're leaving now and should be there by noon. Don't do anything crazy until we can talk." Don't do anything crazy. Like honoring my wife's wishes. Like treating the people she loved with basic human decency. I looked at Maria, who was pretending not to notice my agitation, but clearly waiting to see what the phone calls meant for her family's future. "My children are coming here," I said. "They'll be here in a few hours." Fear flashed across her face. "Maybe we should leave for the day. Take the children to my sister's house until—" "No." The word came out more firmly than I'd intended. "This is your home, Maria. You don't run away from your own home." I stood up and walked to Julie's desk, where I'd left her letters scattered across the surface. Among them was a business card I'd noticed yesterday but hadn't paid attention to. Patricia Henderson, real estate attorney. Julie had been planning ahead, making sure Maria's family would have legal protection. I called the number on the card. A professional but warm voice answered on the second ring. "Ms. Henderson, this is Howard Mitchell. I believe my late wife, Julie Mitchell, was a client of yours." "Mr. Mitchell." "Yes, Julie was a dear friend as well as a client. I'm so sorry for your loss. She was an extraordinary woman. I'm at our beach house, and I've discovered some things about my wife's arrangements here. I need to understand the legal situation regarding the family that's been living here." "Of course. Are you free this morning?" "I'm actually in my office today, and I have all of Julie's paperwork here. We could meet in person if you'd like." I arranged to meet her in an hour, leaving Maria with instructions to prepare lunch for 5 people. If my children wanted a confrontation, they could have it over a meal prepared by the woman they'd tried to intimidate. Patricia Henderson's office was in a converted Victorian house in the historic district of the nearest town. She was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes that reminded me of Julie's when she was determined about something. Julie came to me 3 years ago, she explained, spreading documents across her desk. She wanted to make sure Maria's family would be protected if anything happened to her. We worked together to create several legal safeguards. She handed me a folder thick with papers. There's a living trust that ensures the house can't be sold without providing Maria's family with adequate notice and relocation assistance. There's also a life insurance policy that Julie purchased specifically to cover the house expenses for 10 years. 10 years. Julie had planned for a decade beyond her own death to make sure this family would be secure. Your children can't simply evict Maria's family, Patricia continued. Julie made sure of that. But more importantly, she left you with options. What kind of options? Patricia smiled. Julie was very specific about what she hoped you would choose to do, but she also knew she couldn't force your hand. She set up 3 possible scenarios, each with complete legal documentation. She pulled out 3 separate files. Option 1. You sell the house, but Maria's family receives 6 months' notice and $50,000 in relocation assistance. Option 2. You maintain ownership but sign a long-term lease agreement with Maria, making them official tenants with all the legal protections that provides. Option 3. She paused, studying my face. Option 3. You transfer ownership of the house to Maria's family outright, and you use the life insurance money Julie left to purchase a smaller property nearby for yourself. A smaller property nearby. Julie had even thought about where I might want to live if I chose to stay. She really thought of everything, didn't she? Julie spent months working through every detail, Patricia said. She wanted to make sure no matter what you decided, everyone would be treated fairly. But Mr. Mitchell, I have to tell you, she hoped you would choose option 3. Why? Patricia leaned back in her chair. Because she said you'd been lost since you retired. She said you needed a purpose. A family that actually needed you, not just your money. She thought Maria and her children could give you that. I thought about Carlos asking for help with his homework, Sophia's shy smile when she'd invited me to dinner, Miguel's respectful handshake and genuine interest in my woodworking. When was the last time Marcus or Diana had asked for my advice about anything that didn't involve my finances? There's one more thing, Patricia said, handing me a sealed envelope. Julie asked me to give you this only if you came here and met Maria's family yourself. Inside the envelope was a short note in Julie's handwriting. Howard, if you're reading this, then you've seen what real family looks like. Don't let our children's greed destroy something beautiful. Choose love. Choose belonging. Choose the life we forgot how to give each other. All my love, Jay. I was still sitting in Patricia's office, staring at Julie's final message, when my phone rang. Marcus. Dad, where the hell are you? We're at the house and there are people here claiming they live here. What's going on? I could hear Diana's voice in the background, sharp and angry. I could hear Carlos trying to explain something in his careful English and Maria's worried responses. I'm handling some business in town, I said calmly. I'll be back in an hour. Dad, don't do anything stupid. We need to talk before you make any decisions about these people. These people. As if Maria and her children were objects to be disposed of rather than human beings who had loved my wife. Marcus, I said, I want you and Diana to sit down and have lunch with Maria's family. I want you to listen to what they have to say. And I want you to remember that your mother loved these people. Dad, you're not thinking clearly. These people have been taken advantage of. I hung up and turned off my phone. Patricia was watching me with something that looked like pride. What are you going to do? I looked down at the legal documents that would make Maria's family the rightful owners of the beach house Julie had loved so much. The house where she'd found the family warmth that our own family had somehow lost. The house where she'd faced her illness with dignity and grace, surrounded by people who loved her unconditionally. I'm going to honor my wife's wishes, I said, reaching for a pen, and I'm going to choose the family that chose her. As I signed the papers that would transfer ownership of the house to Maria, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Not grief, not anger, not the hollow emptiness that had consumed me since Julie died. I felt peace. For the first time since my wife's death, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. When I drove back to the house an hour later, Marcus and Diana's cars were still in the driveway. But the atmosphere had changed. Through the kitchen window, I could see my children sitting at Maria's table, looking uncomfortable, but no longer hostile. Sophia was showing Diana something on her phone, probably pictures from her graduation. Carlos was explaining something to Marcus with animated gestures. Maria met me at the door, her face calm but her eyes questioning. "It's done," I said quietly, handing her the deed with her name on it. "This is your house now, legally and officially." Tears filled her eyes. "Senor Howard, I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything," I said. "Just let me stay for dinner one more time, as your guest." As we walked into the kitchen together, I saw my children's faces change when they realized I wasn't carrying real estate listings or eviction notices. I was carrying peace, and for the first time in 6 months, I was home. Later that night, after Marcus and Diana had driven back to the city in confused silence, I sat on the porch Julie had loved so much. Maria had given me her spare room, and tomorrow I would start looking for a small place nearby. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I had finally found the family Julie had been trying to give me all along.